Let's jump to this story from Axios. This is a good one. Biden's polling denial, why he doesn't believe he's behind. This is one of the best headlines I've ever seen because the corporate press is marching away from the Democratic Party. It's remarkable, from the Bill Maher calling Stormy Daniels a liar, MSNBC actually being forced to defend Donald Trump, and now Axios saying Biden's in denial and won't accept that he's losing. They say President Biden doesn't believe his bad poll numbers, and neither do many of his closest advisors. The dismissiveness of the poor polling is sincere, not spin, according to Democrats who have spoken privately with the president and his team. That bedrock belief has informed Biden's largely steady as she goes campaign, even as many Democrats outside the White House are agitating for the campaign to change direction. In public and private, Biden has been telling anyone who will listen that he's gaining ground and is probably up on Donald Trump. Quote, while the press doesn't write about it, the momentum is clearly in our favor, with the polls moving towards us and away from Trump, Biden told donors during a West Coast swing last week. Confronted with some of his bad poll numbers in a rare interview with CNN, Biden offered a more sweeping indictment of polling methodology. The polling data has been wrong all along. How many, you guys do a poll at CNN, how many folks you have to call to get one response? The latest polling in the 6 battleground states likely to decide the presidential race, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, doesn't paint a rosy picture for Biden. I'm going to pause. Biden's right. Biden's completely right. Yeah, he's winning. Everybody better redouble their efforts. Tell all their friends, register voters, do whatever you got to do because Biden's winning, and Biden said so.
I'm in for that message. If it hypes up our people and doesn't let them get apathetic, then I'm down, because this guy cannot. I'm fine with him believing in naivety that he's ahead and that they're going to cruise into the White House, because I am seeing more people than ever who were as left as the day is long in 2020 that are now saying, I don't know what I am, but I'm not that. I'm not with him. He's only up, this New York Times poll, he's only up in one state. I don't know if it showed it in here, but he was up in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But even there, it was within the margin of error. Like, it's a total disaster. I think it was double digits in Nevada. And Nevada's an interesting state because if you want to look at economic sentiment related to issues like housing or new job growth, you look at Nevada. Tourism is big there too, so you see what kind of consumers are spending money on. And Nevada is in a really desperate and painful place, and Nevada is a spot that votes based upon how their economic standing is doing, and clearly they believe that Bidenomics is not working. And I think that when you also start to break down the same poll that it quotes here into actual demographics, you see that among blacks, Hispanics, women, all different classes economically, he is faltering to a level that is worse than Jimmy Carter was looking before he lost to Reagan. I think this poll also showed that if the election were to happen today, Trump would have well over like 340 electoral votes. So it's a disaster.
There's a couple polls that have replicated similar things. I mean, to me, these statements remind me of how selective reality really is. The fact that he's saying, oh, the mainstream media won't talk about it, but we're actually up. No, the mainstream media talked about it all the time. December, January, they were always saying, no, Biden's way ahead and Trump can't, whatever, and the primaries, and they were always on his side. And now it's becoming such a pattern that they're not able to deny the fact. And again, some of it is within the margin of error, right? Some of it is not that Trump is up by 10, 20 points. It's that it's way more narrow than the media had been saying for months and months and months. In fact, it seems to be really shifting in Trump's favor. Don't forget to vote. You have to vote if you want to see it. Because I just think that is the cynical side of me is, if you can scare conservative-leaning, sort of liberty-minded people into complacency, then you won't see the results of these polls. And again, polling data it can be totally fallible. It really depends on who's putting out the poll, who they're surveying, sort of their methodology. But if it's widespread, if it's repeated by multiple universities and outlets over and over again, it really does seem like Biden is either choosing his own reality or he has bad informants all around him who are not letting him see the fate of his campaign.
I just want to point out, too, that today's an election day, and we really, I think, collectively, culturally, have stopped caring, because at this point, it's a foregone conclusion. It is Trump versus Biden. But just to let everybody know, Trump won West Virginia. He's got 86% beating Nikki Haley, and there's, I think, 22% reporting. But also, this one does matter. Shout out to Riley Moore, who's currently sitting at 45% with 36% reporting. So we're fans of Riley.
It looks like they declare for Jim Justice too.
They called it for Jim Justice, huh?
That's what West Virginia Public Radio is saying.
He beat Mooney.
It's really interesting because the effect of taking the presidential campaign out during an election year, for some candidates that might be good, right? You don't have as many voters going to the polls and voting, but for other candidates who need that wave of energy that having a presidential nominee on the ticket would provide, they could suffer. I mean, this is the other thing that we only focus on the president. You have to focus on everything down ticket. Who your state senator is probably going to affect you more directly than who your president is, who your congressman is. It's not that it won't matter, but in terms of what happens to your local community, that happens to your neighborhood, you need to vote in your state elections above all else.
It's true. And a lot of these polls are actually showing that while Biden is disastrously behind, Democrats are actually favored in many of the contentious Senate races. People are split ticketing. It's interesting in these polls. And so to your point, if all you're thinking about is the presidential election, not a whole lot's going to change.
Because even walking through on the federal level.
People are still conditioned to be like default Democrats.
Yeah,
and so they're still getting used to the idea that the Democrat policies that they've had that they've been living under are actually not working, and they're having tangible negative results in their lives. There are so many people out there that for the longest time had just bought into I'm a Democrat because they're the nice people. Those are the moderates that we're actually trying to reach, and those are the people that I say that are like, okay, these are the liberals that we need to reach to get them to come over to our side or whatever. And the reason is because you get an entire narrative fed to you for 20 years or more. Just fed to you all the time, whether it be in the news or whether it be Jon Stewart or whether it be in movies, whatever it is, it's always the same narrative. And so you've got people that are just now getting comfortable with the idea that's like, maybe the Democrats are actually wrong. Maybe the policies, maybe it's not just lies from the Republicans. Maybe the bad things that we're seeing, that I'm feeling, maybe it's real. Maybe it's not just lies from the Republicans. Maybe the Republicans aren't just racist. Maybe it isn't just that they're the bad guys and we're the good guys. Maybe the Democrats are actually wrong. So thank goodness that the people are waking up, but it's about time.
So I pulled up 270 to win Senate projection right now. Republicans are expected in 2024 to get 50 seats in the Senate. Democrats right now 47, but that's actually 45 Democrats and 2 independents who caucus with Democrats. We're looking at 3 toss-up states.
Yep.
So we've got 3 seats which could be won: Arizona, Montana, and Ohio. And I really feel like Montana.
John Tester.
He's awful.
Yeah, it's just, I think we're so polarized. I don't see a reality in which Montana decides. I understand Bozeman's up there, but West Virginia was Democrat. I think Riley Moore was saying he's the first Republican state treasurer in something like 80 years, something like that.
Long time.
The polarization has and Manchin, he's up for re-election in a couple of years, right? Or what's
Manchin's leaving.
Yep.
Leaving right now or leaving in 2 years?
Well, the Senate race that's going on right now is to fill the seat that he is vacating at the end of his term.
Right. Okay. That's
but it ends this fall, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It ends in November.
That's what I was wondering.
It ends when this year's turnover happens.
There's no way he could win. There's no way he's winning in West Virginia. That's the issue.
This was a big debate because it was like, is he going to retire? Is he going to declare himself independent? And then he announced, I am going to step away. And he sort of has toyed with this idea of running a uniparty ticket. You saw him sitting with Romney at the State of the Union. Yeah. It's weird, but I do think that a Manchin Democrat is very different than an Ilhan Omar Democrat, right? Their party is bifurcated in the way that conservative Republican parties are as well. To your point, I think you're totally right. I think people are realizing that this idea that Democrats are the nice people and therefore voting for them is always a vote for the nice thing isn't always right. I also think that conservatives have become more discerning of who is running with the R on their ticket. I think there were a long time where people would be like, oh, well, I'm, let's say I'm an evangelical, so I'm always going to vote for the Republican because they have my values. Actually, there are faults in the Republican Party, too. There are a lot of Republicans who say they're for certain values and they don't actually represent them or they don't vote for them. Their history doesn't back that up. And I think that is why it's hard because there are so many races to pay attention to. At the same time, you have your own life. You can't pay attention to every single thing every single candidate says. And discerning which people are true to your values is really important.
Well, and I think a lot of people are blatantly faking it and have been for a long time, and now they're all getting exposed. So a good example, by the way, I feel that about a lot of Democrats and Republicans.
What do you mean? What do you mean flake?
Here's what I mean.
Good.
Like we mentioned Montana earlier, John Tester. So John Tester is as Democrat progressive as it gets, but every single election cycle, he gets out his old rifle that he's never shot. He
talks about his farm.
He talks about his farm. He talks about his country upbringing, how he's for down home Montana values. And then when you reelect him, he'll go and vote with Ilhan Omar. I know he's obviously in the Senate and she's in the House, but they'll have the same sort of agenda on every single thing. For a while, that would work because people aren't paying attention after the election. But now with how everything's been blown up in social media, you can't get by anymore kind of faking it. And that's a good example.
But check this out. So this is the House interactive map. And we can see that Montana's second is strong Republican, and Montana's first is leaning Republican. I would say, look, if the House, I understand Tester's got the incumbent advantage, and that's probably why they're saying it's a toss-up. I'm saying you look at this, Trump supporters and Republicans and young people are pushing for the Republican Party. It is a really good point that everyone's just screaming Trump's name, and people got to get local and make sure they're focusing on those local races. Because you take a look down here at Colorado's Lauren Boebert, she's switching to 04. But that one's leaning red. Democrats are going to pull some surprise moves. Here's what concerns me about Joe Biden saying, I'm actually ahead. Shadow campaign. The reason Joe Biden is saying he's ahead in the polls is not because he's actually ahead in the polls, he's behind, but it's because they got a plan. And there's got to be something that happens. So remember in 2020, they said the red mirage. Watch out for the red mirage because it'll look like Trump's winning. But then in the middle of the night, it'll change. And then when it happened, they went, see, we told you it was going to happen. Doesn't mean there's nothing weird about it. It just means you said it was going to happen. In fact, that's actually kind of weird that you told us it was going to happen. So if you look at Biden now saying, I'm actually ahead in the polls and the polls are wrong. Then if something weird happens and Biden ends up winning, he's going to then go, we told you he was ahead the whole time. You just didn't listen.
Yeah, I think it's true. I mean, this is the interesting thing about Biden, which is I don't think his campaign actually wants him to talk at all. So if he's saying I'm ahead, maybe his campaign is like, shh, let them think they're winning. It's hard to say. I think the biggest issue is maybe just the apathy and negativity that Americans feel right now. Like if you feel like there is no path forward, maybe you are not going to vote because you just feel doomed. And I think that sense of this is not something, our economic problems, our cultural tensions, if you feel like there's something you can't overcome by voting, that's the issue I think all candidates have to fight against.
Well, I think there is some good news in this, and that's that Democrats now, especially younger ones, a lot of these polls are revealed, cannot stand Biden on three key issues. Number one, they believe he's these are Dems, by the way. So young, progressive Gen Zs cannot stand the way that Biden's handled Israel and Gaza. That's number one. Number two is they feel like he has not fixed or fulfilled on all the promises related to student loans that he would. And number three is that he has not taxed the rich like he said he would. There was a new report that came out that the wealthiest billionaires are paying less in taxes than somebody making 80 grand a year because they're not taking an income. They make 80 grand on their salary, or sometimes often just report a zero, but they take all the tax breaks that Trump called out in 2016 that are employed by all of Hillary Clinton's donors. Y'all remember this wonderful debate. So Gen Z feels like they've been screwed by Biden. That's really prevalent among young women. Then Gen Z men are leaning more and more conservative, and they're starting to show up at the polls and actually represent their political views that are leaning hard right in a way that we haven't seen in a long time. And so my hope would be that Dems have a ton of apathy going into the fall because they feel like Biden hasn't performed and they can't stand the guy. You see, by the way, Dems are predicting this, which is why they're rushing to put all this abortion stuff on the state ballots because they're trying to just get any young Gen Z women to show up because that's the only demographic they actually want in the midterms. So they're trying to drive traffic to the polls. It's not working. It's not translating because they cannot stand Biden. Meanwhile, hopefully, if conservatives will get up off their butts and not be apathetic and drive young turnout and minority turnout, holy cow, I mean, we could actually experience a lot of breakthrough here, but we cannot get apathetic. I know we've said that word like 30 times in the show so far, but I feel that so strongly. Like if we embrace apathy heading into November, because a lot of people are just tired and pissed off, we're going to deal with a whole lot worse circumstances in 4 years where you won't even be able to afford to be apathetic. You're going to be forced to pay attention, and that's not what any of us want.
I feel like maybe people need to reframe how we're seeing everything and look at it not as despair, but as a grand adventure.
Opportunity.
Every generation is faced with a challenge. This is ours. It's not something to be upset about. It's not something to shy away from. It's something to recognize within yourself that there are some people who are not cut out for conflict. Some people more than others. Some people so much so they become warriors who fight on the front lines in physical combat. Brave men and women in uniform going to places that most of us would not go under any circumstances. Some people go there for nothing other than the purpose and the need to serve their country. Then there are people who engage in public sector life, and I mean good people. There's a small handful in Congress. Many of them are not good people. But I look at talking to Riley Moore, just like. Choosing to wait around in the swamp. It's like, I know Riley's a good dude, and so I'm glad he's going in, but at the same time, it's like you are going to be fighting swamp monsters on an uphill battle, and it's so brutal, but there are some people who we can actually trust and hope will do right. And so I say to everybody, don't get upset at the news. The news is always bad because good news is, it doesn't put us at risk. It's like, if we got breaking news that, the economy is great, you'd feel it, you'd feel good, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.